忘れないようにしてください。
Mao Mao, the daughter of an apothecary on the outskirts of the city, is kidnapped by bandits and sold to the imperial palace as a laundry woman, serving the emperor's concubines, eunuchs, and respective staff in the rear palace. 3 months later, Mao Mao notices a fight between two of the emperor's concubines, Li Hua and Gyokugyu, as rumors swirl around that both of their children are getting sick and dying from a curse. Mao Mao deduces the cause from the alleged symptoms and leaves an anonymous message on the windowsill of each concubine to stop using their lead-based face powder. Li Hua ignores the message, and her son later dies. Gyokugyu reads and heeds the message, and her daughter lives. Jinshi, an attractive eunuch, finds out that Mao Mao was the savior, as she is the only one of the servant girls who is able to read his writing. Jinshi introduces Mao Mao to Gyokugyu to explain how the face powder was linked to why her daughter became sick, and Gyokugyu thanks her by making her a lady-in-waiting. Soldiers trying to pacify an outside village get poisoned while they eat, and Jinshi is asked to help decide the fate of the village leader suspected of poisoning them. Mao Mao begins her new role as lady-in-waiting by meeting the others currently working for Gyokugyu, who take extra pity on Mao Mao for her bandaged arm and for being given the job of poison food tester. Mao Mao takes to the task quickly but gets bored after the other ladies pity her. Jinshi later asks Mao Mao to solve the question of the poisoned soldiers, and from the context, Mao Mao deduces that the type of wood the soldiers burned for kindling gave off poisonous fumes, not the food. Later, Mao Mao is tasked by Jinshi with designing an aphrodisiac, gaining access to the court doctor's stock of medicines and ingredients. Mao Mao creates cocoa-based aphrodisiacs but gets distracted collecting medicinal herbs in the garden, only to find that 3 of Gyokugyu's ladies-in-waiting have eaten some of the chocolates she made out of the excess cocoa mixture ahead of time. According to Mao Mao, the aphrodisiac has 3 times the power of the usual tonic, making Gyokugyu tremble in fear when she tried asking her for some for the emperor. Rumors swirl of a mad, ghostly woman attacking others in the outer palace. Jinshi's attendant, Gao Shun, shows Mao Mao a mid-level concubine named Fu Yu, who appears to be dancing on the eastern wall in the moonlight. She was originally brought before the emperor, but then failed to impress him and lost his favor, and she was then pledged to a general in the emperor's army. Afterwards, she went mad and began dancing in the moonlight. The next day, Mao Mao relates a similar story to Gyokugyu and Jinshi of a courtesan she knew who was about to be purchased by a wealthy client, but the deal fell through, leading to the woman becoming so stressed she began sleepwalking and having no memory of her actions the following day. The day Fu Yu is to be sold off to the general, Mao Mao tells Gyokugyu the rest of the story. The courtesan pretended to be mentally ill so she could lower her own price and be sold to a different man who she actually wanted to marry. Fu Yu discovered that the general she was pledged to be a man she loved from her hometown, so she did something similar to fall out of favor with the emperor and was given to the general as his reward instead. The emperor made a direct request for Mao Mao to take care of Lady Li Hua, but repeated attempts to treat her are thwarted by her ladies-in-waiting and kicks her out of her room repeatedly. Jinshi notices Mao Mao's problem and decides to intervene, charming the ladies into allowing Mao Mao to treat Li Hua without any interferences, starting with a special diet which aims to purge her body of the poison caused by the beauty powder her lead lady-in-waiting was secretly using. Mao Mao punishes the lead lady-in-waiting by slapping and pouring the powder on her for carelessly using it. The said head lady-in-waiting is able to return to her post after being detained for a while, declaring she will not repeat her mistakes, while the eunuch who was ordered to recover the banned powder got whipped as punishment. Mao Mao asks Jinshi to build a sauna as she adds regular steam baths to Li Hua's treatment regimen. Li Hua fully recovers in 2 months. When Mao Mao is set to return to Lady Gyokugyu, she teaches Li Hua a technique her brothel sisters taught her to gain back the emperor's favors. As a result, the emperor began to less frequently visit Gyokugyu, allowing her to take it easy. As Mao Mao and Gwen enjoy some grilled matsutake mushrooms, someone comes into the clinic asking for a cure to a curse. Mao Mao gives the patient some ointment to heal the rashes on the patient's arms. Jinshi calls her to ask her opinion on a few substances, as he is also on the hunt for what caused the curse. The day of the garden party is fast approaching, and this time, all of the emperor's top-tier consorts will be attending, including concubines Lihua and Gyokuyu. That also means Mao Mao has to attend as Gyokuyu's lady-in-waiting. When applying her makeup, which is something she tried to avoid, the other ladies-in-waiting reveals a secret, and Jinshi finds out her freckles are her makeup, which acts as a camouflage and deterrent against would-be rapists, since she did work around a brothel. He is also able to find more about Mao Mao's background. Jinshi is so enthralled by her looks that he even gives her one of his hairpins, which made Gyokuyu, who marked her earlier with a necklace, a bit jealous as she is no longer hers alone. The garden party begins, but unknown to everyone, a sinister force is lurking in the background. Amidst the hubbub of the garden party, Mao Mao is caught in the proxy wars between the concubines' ladies-in-waiting, with one of Li Hua's ladies talking smack about her, not knowing she is just in front of her. She also experiences getting 2 more hairpins. One of them is from Lady Li Hua herself. She also learns of the supposed rift between the consorts A Duo and Li Shu, where, due to politics, the very young virtuous consort becomes mother-in-law to the way older pure consort. Things rear its ugly head when Mao Mao finds Gyokuyu's soup poisoned, and a minister later falls due to the same poison. Jinshi sees her coughing up the poison and takes her to the infirmary. Asking about the poisoning, Mao Mao asks Jinshi for Li Shu and her poison taste tester, where she finds that she is allergic to mackerel. Knowing that the rear palace prepared the food, the vinegar used in Li Shu's dish may have gotten swapped with that of Gyokuyu's by accident. Mao Mao knows Li Shu's lead lady-in-waiting may have had a hand, but preferred not to magnify it, giving her a list of the foods Li Shu cannot eat instead. Jinshi notices it and asks Mao Mao if Li Shu is the target of the poisoning. With the events following the garden party, namely the poisoned minister, Mao Mao had to rest until she gets bored and asks Gyokuyu if she could use the parlor. Gao Shun, on Jinshi's request, came by and brought that same silver bowl containing the poisoned soup, wrapped in cloth, taking care not to hold the bowl itself. Using a similar technique she used in her former workplace, Mao Mao dusted the bowl for fingerprints using powder, a cotton ball, and a brush. She finds 4 fingerprints, but sees another set on the bowl's edge, which belongs to an outsider who may have poisoned the soup. This, adding to the fact about Li Shu's clothes clashing with that of Gyokuyu, leads her to think Li Shu is the victim of bullying, and by her own ladies-in-waiting, knowing that the rear palace is full of enemies. The poisoned soup was supposed to up the ante, but Li Hua's taster swapped her bowl for that of Gyokuyu's, saving her from getting poisoned. Later, Mao Mao learns from Xiaolan about the significance of the hairpins as a ticket to getting favors. She asks Li Haku, the soldier who gave Mao Mao a hairpin during the party, for an escort outside. Li Haku, not able to recognize her, but he cannot resist her offer of meeting anyone of the 3 princesses, the best courtesans at the Rokushukan brothel, not to mention seeing that she has 2 more higher-ranking contacts, so he agrees. Mao Mao is then able to visit her father, who thinks her being employed at the rear palace is a twist of fate. Coming from a walk in their medicinal herb fields, Mao Mao sees a servant girl banging at their door who grabs her the moment she sees her and asks for her help. She is taken to a brothel where she arrives at the scene of a double poisoning incident involving a courtesan and a well-dressed customer. Mao Mao manages to rid both victims of the poison. Mao Mao asks the girl for her father, and Mao Mao learned that it was tobacco poisoning that almost killed the victims in what appears to be a double suicide. Stepping out of the room where the brothel's madam met both her and her father, Mao Mao later sees the servant girl trying to plunge a knife down the well-dressed customer's chest, which she prevents as the girl is desperate to kill him. Mao Mao later finds out from another courtesan that the customer, the son of a wealthy merchant, is a sweet-talking liar who seduces and later jilts women in the brothel. One of them is the girl's older sister, and the courtesan who was with the customer and who poisoned him is a close friend of hers. Mao Mao pieces everything together even after the fact is done. It was an attempted murder, as somehow the courtesan tricked the customer into drinking a poisonous infusion made with tobacco leaves. After some pampering by Mai Mei at the Rokushukan baths, Mao Mao visits a room at the annex of the brothel where an unconscious woman is in bed. She heads back to the rear palace after 3 days, where Jinshi welcomed her aside from Lady Gyokuyu and her ladies-in-waiting. Jinshi is still sulking from the shock after Mao Mao's homecoming, though slowly recovering after knowing the truth from Gyokuyu when a eunuch barged into his office reporting of Kaunan, a high-ranking official, dying after a heavy drinking session during a party. After investigation, and after reading Kaunan's lifestyle history, Mao Mao concluded that the excessive salt added to his drink, Kaunan being mostly a serious sweet tooth, killed him. She dropped hints as to his killer, but does not want to hold responsibility for naming that person. Later, Gwen asked Mao Mao to perform an autopsy on the body of a servant woman found drowned in the palace moat, but refused because it is taboo for her as an apothecary, as humans can become medicinal ingredients too. She finds herself middling whether it was a suicide, given the bloody fingers on the victim, or a murder, given circumstances surrounding the wall, as it is impossible for a servant woman with wooden shoes and bound foot to scale the wall without tools. It is later ruled out as a suicide due to added evidence, the woman being at the garden party which killed a minister by poisoning. Here, Mao Mao thought about what poison she would use when she dies, which put Jinshi off, and the more when she requests him that if he were to execute her for some reason, it would be by poison. Meanwhile, Jinshi gets a report on whoever else had burns on their arms relating to the curse from 2 months ago. It was Feng Ming, Lady Aduo's head lady-in-waiting. Rumors circulate around the rear palace about the drowned servant at the Garnet Pavilion, who is accused of poisoning concubine Li Shu's food. Additional gossip suggests that concubine Aduo may lose her title to a younger concubine. During a tea party between concubines Gyokuyu and Li Shu, Mao Mao observes subtle hints of bullying towards Li Shu by her own ladies-in-waiting, seeing her reaction to the honey beverage served to her. Jinshi then sends Mao Mao to assist Aduo without any specific instructions. After investigating, Mao Mao reports back to him, linking the events to Feng Ming's possible ability to send coded messages using colored text plates. Jinshi pranks Mao Mao with honey, triggering a realization connecting the recent incidents, including Li Shu's allergies and the servant's suicide. Mao Mao questions Li Shu about her allergies and notices her fear when mentioning Feng Ming, who, during Mao Mao's stint at her pavilion, seemed approachable and kind and an example to all. Li Shu's ladies-in-waiting resist Mao Mao's probing, but she invokes Jinshi's authority to shut them down and continue. Mao Mao tasks Gao Shun with checking past records, uncovering information about the emperor's deceased son with Aduo, delivered by a doctor whose name resembles that of Mao Mao's father, who is revealed to have been expelled. Mao Mao confronts Feng Ming about past events involving Aduo's baby and the Empress Dowager's child. She discovers that Aduo lost the ability to give birth after her first child, partially due to the doctor attending another royal birth. Later, Feng Ming unknowingly killed Aduo's son by feeding him poisonous honey. The death was treated as a mystery, but this and the previous infertility incident led to Mao Mao's father's expulsion. Feng Ming's loyalty to Aduo and fear that Aduo discovers the truth about her son's death drives her actions, including driving Li Shu away from Aduo and poisoning her during the garden party. Li Shu's return and her closeness with Aduo cause tension, but Feng Ming's motives are revealed out of guilt. However, Aduo is already set to leave the rear palace on the decision of the emperor. The night after Feng Ming's execution, Mao Mao, unable to sleep, encounters Aduo atop the wall where the suicidal servant jumped. Aduo hints at her son's identity, and Mao Mao inadvertently comforts a crying Jinshi. The next day, Aduo surrenders her title before departing for the detached palace in the south, and Mao Mao realizes that seeing Aduo and Jinshi face to face, Her baby might have been swapped at birth, possibly leading to her father's expulsion for not noticing it. Later, as Jinshi obtains more information about Feng Ming and her family, his thoughts were also on the circumstances surrounding Mao Mao's arrival at the rear palace. With Feng Ming's execution, all of her assets were confiscated, and family members, relatives, and connections were meted varying degrees of corporal punishment. Meanwhile, Mao Mao is also included in the resulting mass layoffs as a victim of Feng Ming's and her family's side business of human trafficking. Jinshi is torn between keeping her and fearing it might tear them apart even more because he thinks she hated working at the rear palace. Mao Mao tried negotiating with Jinshi since she has not fully paid the madam of the Rokushukan of her debts, but to no avail. Jinshi came to regret his decision a week later, as all it required to keep her was his order, as Mao Mao returned to the brothel, working part-time as a courtesan. It is during a party thrown by a very rich person outside of the brothel where her sisters Mai Mei, Joka, and Perrin were requested, where she meets Jinshi again, and their interaction is noticed by her three sisters. There, he thought of buying her out of the brothel, which Jinshi did a few days later. Mao Mao has no idea of the events after also seeing Gao Shun in the same party, but it is implied that it is Gao Shun himself who helped throw the party after asking Lihaku for help in contacting the Rokushukan. Mao Mao returns to the palace, but this time to work in the outer palace, much to her surprise, as she thought she is returning to the rear palace. Gao Shun explained that, because of her being fired, they cannot just restore her former position. Gao Shun introduces her to Suiren, one of Jinshi's personal assistants. Gao Shun later shows her the rest of the outer palace and the public and government offices. Jinshi intends to have her become a court lady, but she fails the required exams despite studying, making her Jinshi's personal assistant. She also has to contend with the jealous court ladies, which she is able to brush off. Later, as she wanders into the rear palace for medicinal herbs and getting scolded by a court lady with the scent of sandalwood mixed with another, distinctively bitter smell for entering a place she should not enter, someone rather mysterious has her in his watchful eye. Mao Mao, on Gyokuyu's recommendation, is tasked with educating the new pure consort Lulan and wise consort Lihua on serving the emperor. The teaching sessions, attended by Gyokuyu and Lishu as well, focus on subject matter featuring materials from the old lady at the Rokushukan. While Gyokuyu and Lihua handle the content well, Lishu are overwhelmed, and Lulan remains nonchalant and snobbish. That night, a fire breaks out in a palace building, and Lacan is at the scene to investigate. The next day, Mao Mao, wandering near the scene of the incident while being sidelined with getting medicinal herbs, impromptu investigates and suspects arson. She discovers an ivory pipe at the site and concludes that a smoldering ember from it caused the explosion in the food warehouse by igniting the floating wheat dust. She tells Lihaku, who is investigating the incident, to tell personnel not to smoke in the food warehouses. The expensive pipe, however, raises suspicions about the perpetrator's identity. Gao Shun enlists Mao Mao's help in investigating a case involving a bureaucrat who falls into a coma after consuming raw fugu seasoned with vinegar, similar to an incident 10 years ago. Every detail checks out, save for one, leading her to Gao Shun referring him to a man named Basin, who shows her the kitchen where the food was prepared. Despite interference from the bureaucrat's younger brother, Mao Mao finds the detail that interested her: the seaweed used in the dish, which was imported from the south. She concludes that it was not properly prepared to rid it of its poisons, causing the bureaucrat's coma. The focus shifts to the seaweed's importer, revealed to be the younger brother seeking revenge for ill treatment in their household. Meanwhile, Jinshi reveals that the high military official Lacan comes complaining to his office about him appointing someone connected to the Rokushukan as his servant. Lacan mentioned having an acquaintance at the Rokushukan who, according to him, is a courtesan who would sell her skills but never herself, and whose attitude is kind of similar to Mao Mao's attitude towards Jinshi. Jinshi tasks Mao Mao with solving a case involving the will of a metalworker acquainted with Lakan who died unexpectedly, willing specific items to his 3 sons. The will states that the eldest received the metalworking shack, the second a chest with an inaccessible central drawer, and the youngest a glass fishbowl, and with a note about continuing to do tea parties as usual. Mao Mao, accompanied by Basin, takes a look at the metalworking shack and, upon inspecting the inaccessible chest, discovers solder blocking the central drawer's keyhole. Using sunlight concentrated with the youngest's inherited fishbowl, she melts the solder and, after opening it with the key the second oldest has, finds another key inside, opening all the drawers to reveal items. Initially dismissing it as a bad prank their father played on them, the siblings unite upon the youngest's plea. Additionally, Mao Mao links the bluish crystal to the cause of their father's death, as he works with solder all the time. So, after asking a few more questions about their father's condition before his death, she advises the youngest to seek the help of a doctor, namely her father, just in case. That night, Jinshi asks Mao Mao if she can do makeup for him. Jinshi requests Mao Mao's help in disguising him to appear less attractive for an incognito stroll through town. Mao Mao employs various methods, including altering his appearance, scent, and voice, even dulling his hair and clothing to mask his muscular physique and overall identity, because he is too beautiful to hide his identity in a simple disguise. During their walk, with Basin sneaking and snooping around, Jinshi, going by Jinka, observes Mao Mao's silence, leading to a conversation about her adoptive father, Luomen. Mao Mao reveals that Luomen studied abroad, suggesting privilege, revealing his eunuch status, made so due to the previous Empress Dowager. Jinshi, asking if she knows the regulars at the Rokushukan, also asks how a courtesan's value decreases. Mao Mao, bound by confidentiality, hints at the brothel's workings and discloses 2 ways courtesans lose their value. Losing purity halves their worth, while pregnancy reduces it to nothing, shocking Jinshi. Mao Mao refuses to fully accompany Jinshi to his destination because she, as she is dressed fancily, refuses to blow his cover, and heads home instead for a few days off. Back home, she later awakens from a nightmare, which is actually a scene from her infancy. Her adoptive father, Luomen, sends her on an errand to the Rokushukan, actually to tend to a woman at its annex. The woman is revealed to be Mao Mao's mother, suffering from syphilis, and Luomen's medicines are their only treatment. Luomen appeared out of nowhere at the time the disease is incubating, but got worse because the brothel hesitated to let him treat her. Lakan, a longtime customer, visits, and Mao Mao is told to stay hidden in the room while Mei Mei distracts him. Back at the palace, Suiren tells Mao Mao that they will be on a vegetarian meal for dinner and gives her an errand to fetch what was a bag of potato flour from the inner palace pharmacy, where she encounters Suire, a court lady. Mao Mao wonders why is Jinshi performing purification rituals every time before being assigned to work for long periods, him being a eunuch. Later, Lakan expresses interest in Mao Mao to Jinshi, causing tension as Lakan is out to get her, so as far as him issuing a veiled threat to Jinshi. Later, she wanders around the inner palace again and gathering medicinal herbs when Suire catches her. She claims that she planted the medicinal plants, allegedly for a resurrection medicine, something Mao Mao desperately desires. Gao Shun informs Jinshi of this afternoon's activities as he reflects on his recent interaction with Mao Mao. Meanwhile, Lihaku informs Mao Mao about a theft of ceremonial tools around the time of the explosion at the warehouse. She finds out that the warehouse manager, the official fond of rare food, is ill from poisoning, and Master Kunin, who died from excessive salt intake, is the former warehouse manager. Mao Mao senses a connection along with the ivory pipe she found at the burned warehouse. Lihaku mentions that a court lady, tall and smelled like medicine, gave the pipe as a reward to the guard. Mao Mao has a person in mind which matches that description, but she follows her father's advice not to speculate based on conjecture alone and seeks more information. She shared her findings with Jinshi, thus directing her to investigate further in exchange for a reward, an ox bezoar which just arrived at the pharmacy. Connecting the tools to Jinshi's purification ceremonies, she rushes to the altar of the sapphire sky for that ceremony, which, according to the archivist who is helping her, is happening at that moment. Hindered by guards, she is hit with a club but stands up, determined to enter despite losing consciousness. Lacan vouches for her, surprising everyone present, including Mao Mao. Despite a shot of anger, she rushes inside the building and pushes the person underneath the heavy ornament away from its trajectory as it falls. Injured and losing consciousness, Mao Mao finds out that it is Jinshi that she pushed away and wonders what he is doing in there. Jinshi then carries the injured Mao Mao to his house, passed by a shocked Lacan. Mao Mao wakes up in Jinshi's bedroom to the scent of sandalwood incense and Suiren tending to her. Suiren later asks Mao Mao to go meet Jinshi, Gaoshun, and Basen to explain the previous events leading to Jinshi's attempted assassination, which involves Master Kunen's death, the warehouse fire, the theft of ceremonial tools, and the warehouse manager's food poisoning. One of the stolen tools, an accessory that holds a heavy ornament, was had remade by the late metalworker on orders from someone, but with lead, which easily melts in open flame, and was installed in place around the time of the failed assassination. Lihaku later informs Mao Mao of Suire's death due to poisoning. She asked the coroner, though, if the poison happens to contain thornapple, a drug which, when mixed with pufferfish toxin, is able to stop breathing and heartbeats. And thornapple is plentiful at the court pharmacy, not to mention Suire growing them at that hill where she first met her. The coroner was certain it was Suire that he tended to, with no pulse or breathing. Confirming her suspicions, they find another corpse in Suire's coffin. Mao Mao, intrigued and ticked off by Suire's brains and daring, even the ability to fake her death, seeks to learn the recipe to the resurrection medicine she used from her. After dealing with Suire's case in secret, Jinshi worries about new problems, in addition to potential conflicts with Mao Mao's biological father, Lakan. The situations of concubines Lulan and Lishu are explored, and Gyokuyu seeks Mao Mao's help due to her stopped lunar cycle, which Mao Mao suspects as Gyokuyu being pregnant, given that the emperor still visits her. With her return to the rear palace to help Gyokuyu, Mao Mao faces new challenges at the palace with Aduo gone and a quirky new concubine in Lulan as her replacement. Meanwhile, news circulates about one of the Rokushukan's 3 princesses being bought out. Mao Mao personally takes charge of cleaning up the rear palace pharmacy. This is after the doctor in charge of the inner court pharmacy was punished with a pay cut for mismanaging it. Gwen reveals that his family is the official purveyor of paper to the palace. But ever since the Empress Dowager banned the cutting of trees, their business went downward as their new formulation resulted in a poor quality paper. Mao Mao helps him improve the paper quality by finding the cause of the poor quality of the paper, which involves the water trough used by the oxen in the paper-making process. Later, Lihaku seeks Mao Mao's advice on buying out a courtesan, particularly Pyrin, who is revealed to be Mao Mao's wet nurse as a baby, owing to her unusual condition. Mao Mao evaluates Lihaku's physique, which causes a misunderstanding with Jinshi when he barged in unexpectedly. Jinshi offers double the price to help him, but Lihaku declines, as it is not satisfying to obtain Pyrin with someone else's money. Meanwhile, as Pyrin reveals in her letter to Mao Mao that she is waiting for her Prince Charming, she also suggests that Lacan may be interested, following rumors about a courtesan from the Rokushukan being bought out, which ticked Mao Mao off. As Mao Mao continues to work for the pregnant Gyokuyu and tending to her daughter, Princess Xiaoling, Lacan egged on Jinshi again, this time wanting to see blue roses by the time of the next spring party. Jinshi gives in for the sake of not crossing him, so he asks, of all people, Mao Mao. She accepts the task at hand because she wanted to rub it in Lacan's face. Using Lady Lihua's sauna as a greenhouse, she attempts to accelerate the flowering of 100 rose bushes procured and put into place with Xiaolan's help. Her tending to the roses includes all-nighters, and is worrying Xiaolan, even Gyokuyu's ladies-in-waiting. Her efforts, though, were not in vain, as she is able to produce them in time for the spring party that would formally introduce Consort Lulan, as Jinshi sees the roses as his opportunity to stand his ground in front of the emperor as he is surrounded by tricky, envious rivals. Mao Mao later revealed to Jinshi the secret to the multicolored roses by letting the blooms suck in dyed water. But she is not done yet, as she is up to catching Lacan off guard. The episode also shows Lacan's view of people as chess pieces, with most of them as pawns, as he ponders on his failed provocation and as he remembers the red manicured nails of the courtesan he used to play Go with, when he is surprised to see Mao Mao, with painted fingernails, with Jinshi and Gaoshun. Lacan is challenged by his daughter Mao Mao to a game of Chinese chess, with her living with him should he win, much to Jinshi's shock, but him buying out an aging courtesan from the Rokushukan should he lose. A stipulation that the winner takes one of the cups of hard liquor spiked with a drug that turns into poison after 3 sips and lets the loser drink its contents is added, with abandonment being considered as a defeat. Mao Mao lost twice in a row, meaning she could have drunk 2 of the 3 poisoned cups, but won on the 3rd, which Jinshi thinks was Lacan losing on purpose. He falls after drinking the contents of the cup. Jinshi, thinking he has been poisoned, hears from Mao Mao that Lacan abstains from alcohol, thus making him easily drunk. That made him easier to be taken to the Rokushukan. Lacan finds himself awake inside the Rokushukan and tended to by Meimei, Feng Xian's former attendant, with something bitter Mao Mao made for him. She also left him a dried blue rose in a wooden box. More into Lacan's past is revealed. His inability to distinguish people from each other caused his father to consider him useless, running away to his mistress in disgust. This led him to a carefree life, learning chess and Go in his spare time. Only his clumsy but intelligent uncle understood him, teaching him to see people as chess pieces. He used that knowledge to lead a squadron of men despite no actual combat experience. On a lossless roll, he challenged Feng Xian, the Rokushukan's undefeated Go player. He finally recognized a human face, hers, for the first time, as he lost to her. He continued to play with her until the time he hears that she is being bought out due to her popularity. It is then that she gave herself to him. Around that time, his uncle was ousted from his position, and he was sent abroad to study for a while. Around the same time, Feng Xian wrote to him that the buyout was cancelled. He thought he'd be away for 6 months, but it took him 3 years. When he returned, he found all of Feng Xian's unanswered letters, including her mummified, severed finger. Horrified, Lacan rushed to the brothel to see her, but by then, it was too late. Feng Xian is gone as she became pregnant, and the reason the buyout fell through, forcing her to work like any ordinary courtesan. Lacan yearns for Mao Mao's affection, though he plans revenge on Jinshi for laying his hands on her daughter thrice. Just then, the old lady of the Rokushukan calls him to pick one courtesan from her brothel's lineup. He chooses Meimei but is drawn to an old lullaby from an annex. He rushes towards the door, interpreting the withered blue rose as a message from Mao Mao, and selects Feng Xian, willing to pay any price. Meanwhile, as Mao Mao and Basin encounter Lulan and her father on the way back, he tells her to go see Jinshi. She reveals to him that she did that to Lacan out of gratitude, since Feng Xian had the option to abort her, but she seemed to have wanted her pregnancy. Mao Mao also knows his inability to recognize faces, which was explained to her by Luomen, though she can recognize his and her face, hence Lacan's strange attachment to her. She also reveals her dislike, but not hatred, for him, as after all, he helped her save him during that purification ceremony. Mao Mao then warns Jinshi not to make him his enemy, as he would never become his ally. Later, Meimei sends Mao Mao a dress which she will use when dancing for her during her wedding. While trying it on atop the wall of the rear palace, Mao Mao nearly falls off a wall when she is surprised to see Jinshi watching. Jinshi mentions of some weirdo buying out a courtesan who requested a leave of 10 days. Mao Mao knows it's Lacan, but her lips are sealed as to who Lacan bought out. She knows it's her mother, of which she has no memory of her being such. Mao Mao never got to know her, as the old lady asked everyone to keep quiet, though there were leaks about it and the time she cut the tip of her little finger as a baby, things she already gotten over, being happy to be Luomen's daughter. When she finds out that her leg wound opened up again and attempted to stitch it, Jinshi grabbed her and jumped off the wall to ground level and carry her back to the palace, which became sort of a tender moment between the two, until Mao Mao asked for the ox bezoar he owed her. A few days later, Jinshi comes to the Jade Pavilion with another case for Mao Mao.